What happens when you give game developers unlimited time and unlimited money to build a space sim? Star Citizen is the answer. Over a decade in alpha while raising over $800 million. They've created something that's simultaneously the most impressive and most frustrating gaming experience ever made. Players drop $48,000 on ship packages. They spend years waiting for features that never arrive. The question isn't whether it's good or bad, it's whether this whole thing was designed to never actually finish, and why that might be exactly what the developers want.
It's a great question. Always the best question.
Here's something weird about Star Citizen that should make you stop and think. Most games spend maybe 2 years in alpha, then move to beta, then release. Star Citizen has been in alpha for over a decade. Any gamer who's followed development cycles knows this is straight up bizarre. Minecraft knocked out its alpha in 2 years and moved on. But Star Citizen, they practically built a permanent residence in alpha status. The alpha label isn't just a development phase for Star Citizen. It's become a business model that lets them sell unfinished content forever. In the actual gaming world, alphas are where devs hammer out basic systems and test core mechanics to see if they're even worth a damn. Cloud Imperium Games, though, they've turned it into their own money-printing business model. You find the big problems and fix them. Then you move on. But Cloud Imperium Games has figured out something brilliant and terrible. They can sell you stuff for an alpha game and never have to deliver a finished product. While other games use alpha to test basic systems, Star Citizen uses it to justify selling $30,000 ship packages for a game that might never actually finish. I'm not kidding about that number. $30,000 for virtual spaceships. In an alpha, you could literally buy a decent used Honda, put a down payment on a condo, or build 3 high-end gaming PCs for that kind of cash. And remember, this is all for digital spaceships in a game that regularly nukes your progress with server wipes.
I'm not even mad. That's amazing.
Let that sink in. The alpha status gives them a get-out-of-jail-free card for every broken promise and missing feature. Server meshing was supposed to be done years ago and remains stuck in testing phases. Where is it? Still in development, because hey, it's alpha. Squadron 40 Who was supposed to release in 2016. Where is it? Still being worked on, because alpha. The game runs like garbage on most computers. No problem. It's just alpha. Every time someone complains about something being broken or missing, they can point to that alpha label and shrug. Let's compare this to games that actually graduated from alpha and became real games. Minecraft spent about 2 years in alpha, then moved to beta, then had a real release with version numbers and everything. Kerbal Space Program did the same thing. These games had actual progression through development phases because the developers wanted to ship finished products. They wanted to say, this is done, this is the game we made for you. The problem gets worse when you realize that moving to beta would mean they'd have to freeze new ship sales. Beta means you're feature complete. Beta means you're just fixing bugs and polishing things up. But if Star Citizen moved to beta, they couldn't keep selling new ships every month. They couldn't keep promising new features. They'd have to actually deliver something complete. Players have spent hundreds or thousands of dollars on ships for a game that wipes their progress regularly. Imagine buying a car and the dealership saying, oh, by the way, every few months we're going to take it back and you'll have to earn it again. That's what server wipes do to your progress in Star Citizen. You buy a ship with real money, you play for months, then boom, wipe. Everything's gone except the stuff you bought with cash. The real issue here is that the alpha label protects them from having to deliver a finished product while still taking your money. It's genius if you think about it. They get all the benefits of selling a complete game without any of the responsibility of actually making one complete. They can keep changing things, keep adding features, keep selling ships. And if anything doesn't work, well, it's just alpha. At this point, calling it an alpha is just smoke and mirrors. It's not a development phase, but a business strategy designed to dodge accountability. Normal games have to ship and face reviews and criticism based on their final state. Alpha games get judged on their potential instead of their reality. You can't really criticize an alpha for being incomplete because that's what alpha means. It's incomplete by definition. This whole setup creates a situation where they have zero incentive to actually finish the game. Why would they? The alpha model is making them incredibly rich while letting them avoid all the hard decisions that come with shipping a real product. But speaking of making money, you need to see what they're actually charging people for these virtual spaceships. The Legatus pack cost $48,000. $48,000. That's not a typo. That's a new car. That's college tuition. That's more than many people earn in a year. And what do you get for that money? A bunch of virtual ships for a game that's still in alpha and might never be finished. But here's the really crazy part. To even be allowed to buy this package, you had to have already spent $10,000 on other ships first. They made you prove you were willing to throw away massive amounts of money before they'd let you throw away even more massive amounts of money. You can buy individual ships for $400, $800, or over $1,000, and these aren't even the most expensive ones. Think about that for a second. Over $1,000 for a single virtual spaceship in a game that's not even done yet. You could buy a decent used car for that money. You could take a vacation to Europe. You could put it in savings and actually have something real to show for it. But no, people spend it on virtual spaceships that exist only in an alpha game that wipes your progress every few months. The crazy part is people actually buy these things. Lots of people. Cloud Imperium has raised over $700 million selling virtual ships, which means the developers have zero incentive to stop selling them. And honestly, would you kill this golden goose? They've cracked the code to get space sim fans dropping Lamborghini money on JPEG ships that might never fully function as advertised. It's like selling someone a deed to a house on Mars. Sure, maybe someday you'll live there, but right now you're just holding a piece of paper and hoping. Compare this to other games where a $20 skin feels expensive. In most games, you complain when they charge you $5 for a cosmetic item. You write angry forum posts about how greedy the developers are. But here, people are dropping mortgage payments on virtual ships and calling it an investment in the future of gaming. It's like watching someone pay restaurant prices for pictures of food. The real kicker is that these expensive ships often perform worse than the cheap starter ships in actual gameplay. Players who spent thousands on multi-crew ships watch helplessly as cheap fighters blow them up in seconds. The big expensive ships are slow, their weapons can't track small targets, and they're basically flying targets for anyone in a nimble fighter. Think about how broken that is from a game design perspective. You spend thousands of dollars on a ship, and it performs worse than the starter ship everyone gets for free. It's like buying a Ferrari and discovering it loses races to a Honda Civic. Players who thought they were buying an advantage in combat actually bought a disadvantage. They paid premium prices for inferior performance.
The ship sales aren't about gameplay balance. They're about extracting maximum money from players before the game is even done. Cloud Imperium has figured out that people will pay incredible amounts of money for the promise of future fun. They're not selling you a working product. They're selling you hope. They're selling you the idea that someday, maybe, these ships will be worth what you paid for them. But right now, in the actual game you can play today, spending more money makes you worse at combat. Your expensive multi-crew ship needs multiple people to operate effectively, but the game doesn't provide any systems to make multi-crew gameplay actually work. Your crew sits in turrets that can't hit anything, while a single pilot in a basic fighter destroys your ship worth more than a car.
Hey, yo, what the fuck?
The whole premise of expensive ships being better falls apart the moment you try to use them. Multi-crew gameplay was supposed to be Star Citizen's big selling point. Instead, it's become the game's biggest joke. Picture this amazing scenario they sold you on. You and your friends working together on a massive ship, manning turrets, managing systems, coordinating attacks, like you're living in Star Trek or something. One person pilots, while another handles shields, someone else manages power distribution, and your gunners rain death on enemy ships. It sounds incredible. It sounds like the future of space combat gaming. Load into any PvP zone with your $750 hammerhead and watch as a couple of dudes in starter ships absolutely shred your expensive floating coffin. Your gunner buddies might as well be binge-watching Netflix for all the good those turrets do. This isn't an exaggeration. This happens constantly. Your expensive multi-crew ship gets taken apart by players in basic fighters who paid pocket change for their ships. Your crew watches as your multi-$1,000 investment explodes around them. The whole fantasy of coordinated space combat falls apart the moment you encounter competent pilots in basic fighters. The turrets have a firing cone and range cutoff at roughly 500 meters, which fighters exploit by staying outside that zone. The shields don't protect against focused fire from multiple attackers. Your big ship moves like a floating brick under the new master flight mode, while fighters zip around with superior agility. Your gunners spend most of their time watching empty space, while enemy fighters dance outside their effective range. The shields that cost you extra money get chewed through in seconds by sustained fire from weapons that cost nothing.
Your crew ends up as expensive passengers, watching their ship explode, while the pilot desperately tries to run away. Think about how that feels. You convinced 3 friends to hop on your ship for some group combat. You spent serious money on this thing. Everyone gets in their positions, ready for epic space battles. Then some players in starter ships show up and systematically destroy you, while your friends sit in turrets that can't engage targets beyond their range. They can't protect the ship. They just get to watch the hull integrity drop to 0. The developers keep tweaking turret tracking and shield strength, but they're treating symptoms instead of the disease. Every patch brings minor adjustments to turret rotation speed or shield regeneration rates. They buffed the Polaris turrets with increased ammo capacity, then nerfed its shields and maneuvering to balance things out. But the outcome stays exactly the same. Fighters still avoid the turret's effective range and chip away at the ship's defenses until it explodes. The fundamental problem never gets fixed, because they don't want to admit what the fundamental problem actually is. The real problem is that the game rewards solo play in small ships over teamwork in big ones, which breaks the entire premise they built their marketing on. Star Citizen sold itself as a game where bigger ships and more crew members would dominate smaller vessels through superior firepower and coordination. Instead, the game mechanics punish you for bringing friends and reward you for flying alone. The combat system encourages individual skill in nimble fighters over group tactics in capital ships. Players who bought expensive ships for group gameplay find themselves flying alone in cheap fighters just to compete. These people spent hundreds or thousands of dollars specifically to play with friends in multi-crew scenarios. Now, they park their expensive ships and hop into Arrows and Gladius fighters because those actually work in combat. The ships they bought for group fun sit unused, while they play solo in basic fighters that cost almost nothing. Know why those massive multi-crew ships are basically floating death traps? The combat system was never built for team play in the first place. It's all about twitchy dogfighting reflexes and solo glory. Your squad manning those turrets might as well be shooting spitballs for all the damage they do, while some dude in a starter ship runs circles around you. Until they completely redesign how combat works, multi-crew gameplay will remain broken, and expensive ships will continue to be floating coffins for players who believed the marketing promises. But even if you manage to survive combat, you still have to figure out how to actually play the game in the first place.
Most games teach you how to play them. Star Citizen expects you to figure it out yourself, or watch hours of YouTube tutorials. When you boot up Call of Duty or Fortnite, they walk you through the basics. They show you how to move, how to shoot, how to complete objectives. Star Citizen drops you into a world with zero explanation and expects you to somehow know what you're doing. Good luck with that. Basic actions like buying a gun, refueling your ship, or accepting a mission require knowledge that the game never actually teaches you. Want to buy a weapon? Better hope you know which shop sells what kind of weapons, how to navigate the confusing inventory system, and which currency you need to use. The game has a UEC, which is Alpha United Earth Credits, plus REC and Reputation, with different factions that affects what missions you can take and what items you can buy. None of this gets explained. The game just throws currency symbols at you and expects you to figure out what they mean and how to get more of them. New players spend more time watching guide videos than actually playing. And even experienced players need wikis to understand basic mechanics. As one player put it, I don't think it really teaches you how to do a lot of stuff. I just had to look up a lot of stuff. That's not normal. That's not how games should work. You shouldn't need external resources just to understand how to play a video game. But that's exactly what Star Citizen demands from you. You'll spend 30 minutes trying to figure out why your ship won't start, only to discover you need to manually turn on multiple different systems. Power, shields, weapons, quantum drive, life support, landing gear, engines, flight systems, and other components that other games just turn on automatically. This isn't realistic complexity. This is busy work disguised as depth. The manual system toggles for powering shields, weapons, and quantum drives require separate steps that add nothing meaningful to the experience. The interface is so confusing that players create flowcharts and spreadsheets just to understand how to buy and equip items. Think about that. Players are making their own instruction manuals because the game won't tell them how basic systems work. They're drawing diagrams and making charts to explain what should be simple processes. When your players need to create external documentation just to play your game, you've failed as a game developer. Cities run at 15 frames per second on high-end computers, making basic shopping trips feel like a technical challenge. You want to buy some armor or weapons? Better hope you can tolerate slideshow frame rates while you navigate confusing shops with unclear inventory systems. The performance is so bad that simple tasks become exercises in patience. You're not just fighting the confusing interface, you're fighting the engine that can barely run the game. Even simple tasks like meeting up with friends become epic quests involving multiple game systems and loading screens. Want to play with your buddy? First, you need to figure out which server you're both on, then navigate to the same location, then deal with the fact that one of you might fall through the floor or get stuck in geometry. What should take 5 minutes becomes a 30-minute ordeal involving multiple attempts and constant troubleshooting. The complexity isn't depth, it's poor design that mistakes confusion for sophistication. One player described it perfectly when they said the game feels like you need to have a PhD in how this game works to even start playing. That's not a compliment. That's a fundamental failure of game design. Games should be easy to learn and hard to master, not impossible to understand from the start. But here's the thing about all these problems. They could theoretically be fixed with enough time and money. The question is whether the developers actually want to fix them. Star Citizen has delivered certain ships and mechanics over the years, proving they can finish some things. But after 12 years and $840 million, what would it actually take to reach a real release? They'd need to stop selling new ships, fix the fundamental gameplay problems, and commit to actual release dates with a clear milestone to beta that players and critics keep demanding. But here's the problem. Doing any of those things would hurt their current business model. The real question after a decade isn't whether Star Citizen will add more ships or features, it's whether they can finish the core systems that make it an actual game, and whether Perpetual Alpha is worth your investment. Drop your pain in the comments if you've got a hangar full of expensive digital paperweights, or if you're still trying to figure out how to even take off without crashing. Bonus points if you've spent more on Star Citizen than your first car.